All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Glad to have you on for the July 9th edition of the DAACAT. Jim McDermott here as a TA in Northwest Iowa, and we've got Dustin Renner and Nora Schultz also with us. So, agenda trivia question, hit on GDUs, see how far ahead we are. Current topics, a lot of things going on, especially some critical things, corn pollination and disease update. Like we're talking, we've had plenty of moisture, so seems like we're definitely moving into a disease time of the year. And some areas, as much nice rain as we've had, some areas got a little excessive rain, so talk about some ponding. And Ben Colby, I think hopefully you're on, but Ben will also give us a research farm update from his farm. Things are looking real nice down there. And we'll finish up with the spotlight product and then the QR code for the half credit and crop management of CCA. So trivia question does have to do with corn pollination, and there will be a wide range for an answer on this one. But how many corn pollen grains, individual grains, does a one tassel produce? 2.5 million is the correct answer, or 2 to 5 million. Kaya, which that's two catch in a row, I believe, back-to-back champion for Kaya Thomas. So yes, 2 to 5 million. And David Simonson was right there. So yeah, a lot of wide range from 2 to 5 million. I'm always amazed, and we'll get into a little bit of the corn pollination facts here in a bit, but I'm amazed that the lack of pollen is usually never a problem. Could be extreme scenarios, but we've got enough pollen from one plant to pretty much cover a whole quarter. So just a matter of having it come out at the right time and not having it desiccate and all those good things. But that is the correct answer. So congratulations, Kaya. All right. GDU accumulation, and I picked Sioux County, so we're way out west. And as of this morning, different planting dates, surprise, surprise, ahead of the long-term average. And from the earlier planting dates, the 11th of April, that's when we're sitting the most ahead. So we're accumulating right around 23 a day. So we're really at about 5 days ahead of the long-term average. So, not huge, but again, like we've been talking about, we've got a high percent of our corn and beans planted in that fairly early window. So, that's helping our overall crop stage on where we're at. So, they always have the way too early top 25 rankings, and probably not way too early to start predicting black layer, but, rule of thumb is 50 to 65 days after pollination. So, and really, pollination is of course shortly after silking occurs. So to me, September 10th would probably be some of the earliest. I mean, obviously there were tassels out by July 4th, some even a few days before that. Most likely by the time we pollinated, we were probably the 5th through to right now. And yeah, add your 55, 60 days onto that, give or take. Guessing we'll have black layer starting the 10th, but to me, it always seems like even if we have above normal GDUs, it tends to be on the plus side of 60 days, which is good. I would say the years, and 2012 is one that comes to mind when we were probably less than 60 days, closer to that 55 days. We were hot and dry, and it was black layering prematurely. So the longer we can go with black layer, getting it closer to 65 days after pollination, the better. And hopefully that's the case this year to have that long ear fill period. But looks like fairly early black layer, our pollination dates. All right, well, let's jump into some of the current topics. And first off, some of those fun facts, I guess depends on your definition of fun, but I think they're just some interesting things. And won't go through all these. I guess to me, one of the key things is I'll get calls about, well, we've got some tassels, but we don't have silks, or vice versa. Sometimes we have silks out and not tassels. That's usually quite normal. The only time we run into problems if we do have an extreme hot, dry scenario. We're sitting there 100, 105 degrees, and we haven't had much moisture heading into silking. And sometimes that can, of course, throw off the nick. But boy, most areas with the moisture that we've got, we're in good shape. Always kind of amazing how much those silks can grow, 1.5 inches per day. And I don't think it's listed here, but I believe the silk is like 70% water. That silk emergence will occur over a 4 to 8 day span, and they'll continue to grow until they pollinate. The key thing is, as far as especially around management, is if we've got clipped silks. And rootworm beetles, of course, are the main one that come to mind. And to me, there can be Japanese beetles, there can be the red-headed flea beetles, there can be various things that can be clipping those silks. But as long as we've got a 1/2 inch sticking out above those ear tips, and to me, a 1/2 inch is getting pretty close. I don't know about your opinion, Dustin and Nora, but I wouldn't want to let it get to within a 1/2 inch. Now it can still grow, but if we've got it within a 1/2 inch, chances are we've got something that's been working on it pretty hard. So we either need to take those out, get them sprayed, or we don't want to let it get to that 1/2 inch. This year, hopefully, we've got enough even silking. That'll help. Years like last year when we had wet spots and uneven tasseling, uneven silking, that's when you really run into problems as far as interfering with pollination with that silk clipping. And a few other factors. Again, that last bullet point, the 2 to 5 million grains pollen per tassel. Any other fun facts either of you want to add?
I don't know. I think you hit all the fun facts, Jim. But, as I just think of how we've started off this year, we've had some struggles here and there, but mostly it's been pretty ideal. And now we look at the extended forecast and we're starting to tassel and, temps in the mid 80s, lows in the 60s at night. I mean, we're set up to have a good pollination window.
Absolutely. Well, jumping into some of the things that maybe aren't as ideal, but you were seeing some rootworm feeding, Dustin. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that picture on the right was a little more striking in person than maybe this picture shows, but that was a 4-seed product, 14C59 Brevant, and then on the right was DEKALB 11442 carrying the Smart Stacks Pro trait. This was out of the Moreland plot. We were down there with the field day last week and dug some roots. They have a corn-on-corn plot. I think it's 5th or 6th year. And doing some root score ratings on that, it's about 1.5 nodes removed from that 4-seed. And not going to say, I mean, there was a lot of rootworm. We floated lots of larvae, and you could find larvae all over these root masses as well. So there was some feeding on the Smart Stacks Pro, but not near as much as the 4-seed. So obviously helping our growers out, doing some management practices, give a look to see if we have any rootworm feeding, if we need to do something different going forward. But they're definitely out and about. I think Nora's got some pictures too. I know she's been doing a lot of rootworm digs and finding some in her area.
Yeah, I know the picture on the left, I had a dealer send me over the weekend down into Cherokee County, but corn on corn, fairly heavy pressure in the Vorseed on the left, and 11442 again. Of course, the Smart Stacks Pro continues to look good. Did have another picture from yesterday. This would be in Plymouth County. And this was Smart Stacks plus planting time insecticide, soil applied insecticide. So pretty good feeding taking place here. And this area did get a little bit of wind. It seems like each of these storms, the potential is there for wind, root lodging, and green snap, but this one was lodged, and otherwise, grower probably wouldn't have been out in the field looking. But that one ring, that second ring from the top below the brace roots was pretty well, every one of them chewed within 1/2 inch of the stalk itself. So pretty significant feeding there. So we know it's out there. We know it's hit and miss too. A lot of areas haven't had much wind to expose anything. And we've had pretty good moisture. So, conditions are favorable. You're usually not going to see the stress from even 1.25 NIS score. Anything beetles? No, you're finding any beetles?
I have not found any beetles yet, but that's probably on my task list for this week. But just another, you guys have heard me say this in the newsletter and on this meeting before. This is a really high value touch point to growers that is not, it doesn't cost us that much time or money to go out and float and dig roots and stuff like that. And in case anybody doesn't know, DeWalt makes a portable power washer. So if I assume Milwaukee does too, if you're a Milwaukee user. But to get these really nice, clean roots, just saying, I was very excited to get mine. Just know that it's out there. And this is, it's a really big deal to some growers. If there's someone that you're really wanting to target, this is an easy thing. And those great talking points that Jim gave earlier can be really valuable to growers, to what we think might be simple. I just want to call that out, right? Growers, this blows their mind.
Well, how about disease risk? Seems like that is been jumping up lately, hasn't it?
Moisture brings all these sorts of disease. Do you guys want to cover this one and then I can jump in on the tar spot, or do you want me to cover this one?
No, I can cover it, Nora. I mean, you just look at the weather that we've been having: adequate rainfall, lower temps, higher humidity. And these are some risk maps that we try to send out on a weekly basis. And these are some tar spots. I know the risk levels, and you can see where your county lies. And we're kind of mostly in the moderate range within tar spot. But I know as you look at northern corn leaf blight, I think most of all of our area will be in the high risk rating for northern corn leaf blight. Now it is really ramped up. I haven't seen any in particular yet. Jim, did you see some yesterday? That picture that you sent me, did it have some northern corn on it?
Yeah, I've seen just a little bit, and I've had some dealers either send pictures or tell me that they're seeing it. So I think northern corn leaf blight has gotten a start, and not a surprise. 2 weeks time, you can see how much the risk level has changed. We're technically, a lot of our counties are in the high category right now for risk.
Correct. Yeah. So we're in the high rating. I think we're moderate for gray leaf, but northern corn, it seems to be the one that hits us the hardest, especially always coming in late. We're right in the heat of fungicide season, and a lot of years, I guess, there hasn't been a whole lot of disease found, as we're trying to make a fungicide pass, but it always comes in a little bit later after post-hassle. But the risk is out there, guys. So.
And when you see these maps, guys, these are a third party. This is not something that Bayer is generating on our own. Just, some growers say, well, you just want to sell more fungicide, right? Well, these are from a company called Echo Forecast. They're using a variety of models and external sources for this information. So this is a neutral party that we are purchasing these maps from to make sure that you guys can get the most up-to-date and fair information to supply for you and your growers. So when showing these maps to people, when we give you the ones attached to the newsletter, those do have the little tag that says Echo Forecast, and that's what that means. That is a separate company that is doing these calculations and running these models. It's not Bayer internal only.
And by the way, southern rust, the risk is low. Apparently we haven't had the southern winds, so we'll see. We know when it came in last year was from here on, so still has a potential. And common rust actually was in the high category, which a little bit surprising. Common rust tends to like the cooler temperatures, but we'll see how that one develops. Usually common rust, it's there, it's present, doesn't tend to spread or do much as far as economic damage.
So this is the updated confirmations of tar spot finds in the state of Iowa. This is from the website Corn IPM Pipe. They also have a southern rust map. And I did actually snoop on that yesterday, Jim, and there were some confirmations right in that like Arkansas, Mississippi, right along the river. So if you guys can kind of keep that in the back of your mind, if we get some tropical storms that come up through that Gulf of Mexico and up along the river, that is the place that they're finding southern rust this year. But this is a website that you can submit to. If you find tar spot in your county, we can submit to. And so we do have 15 counties in the state of Iowa that have found tar spot as of yesterday. And this is what, Jim, I think there were 3 or 4 counties added just yesterday from the map that we saw on Monday the 7th. So take a look at this website. It's interactive. It's public, so you can send it out to anybody, but it's a really nice way to kind of see what's going on in the countryside and how things are moving. Hopefully not towards us, but we know that that will probably happen. So when thinking about tar spot, it is fairly new, right? We haven't had it for decades like gray leaf spot and northern corn leaf blight. The key is these small raised lesions. They can go to the underside of the leaf and they can't be scratched off. So a lot of times it'll look like fly poop, you know, that the black dots we get on our white vehicles, our fleet vehicles, stuff like that. That is exactly what tar spot looks like, but it can't be rubbed off. You can kind of feel it as you run your fingers over the top, and we're looking for the rule of 7s. So 7 hours of leaf wetness, 70% humidity for 7 hours a day. So that's a really nice pattern to help us remember. It can sit in the field for that's what we call a latent period, for 12 to 15 days or longer. It's a very long latent period. So we're not able to pick it up with our eyes, but it's there. And that's a conversation point to talk with your growers when talking about a fungicide application, especially using products like DEKALB Complete, where we have multiple modes of action. A lot of these products are preventative. They're slight curative from our triazole families. Probably, what would you guys say, 7 days? Infections within 7 days, we can reach back. We're not going to fix these lesions, but that reach back is there. So we want to make sure that we're getting it on ahead of some of these infections so we can protect that leaf surface and stop these infections from happening before we can see leaves that look like this. What do you guys have to add?
Yeah, I think, Nora, you hit on it well. There's just a heightened awareness of tar spot. You know, I see in the chat, and I got a text as well, so that must be the news going around that potentially found in Sac County. I know, Jim, you've gotten some pictures sent your way that possibly tar spot, but there's some that are getting confused for tar spot. And obviously it's good that everybody's out looking, but I think there's some misidentification, and it's the hot topic on every grower's mind and concern, and rightfully so. I mean, it can zap a lot of yield, but let's just make sure we're identifying it correctly. But
one thing that I want to call out when looking for diseases, for any disease, if anybody knows looking for the halo effect, you pull the leaf off and you look at the top, you put it up towards the sun, and not physical damage won't have a halo around it, but a pathogen will. It's like, think if you scrape your knee and it gets red and kind of swollen around that cut, it's infected. Corn leaves will do the same thing. If you hold it up, you'll have that kind of light yellow highlighter color around that lesion when you lift it up to the sun, and you can know that it's an active infection.
Yep, great points. And I would have no doubt that there's more tar spot than what's on the map on the last slide. But we're at the point where when doubt that we're going to start seeing quite a bit of it. I wanted to also draw attention again, just as a reminder, we put it in newsletter as well, but these are some of the hybrids a little more susceptible within our lineup. As you noticed, a lot of the products released in the last 2 years, we've ramped up the overall tolerance to tar spot. So heading in the right direction there.
Yeah. So just wanted to hit on this. Obviously, we've had just some nice rainfalls all spring, summer long, and off to a great start. But we have had some areas that over the weekend just had some isolated pockets with some heavy rain that maybe is making our crop go backwards in some spots. And it doesn't even show on this map as well, but there was a pocket, I know I was just out with some growers and dealers yesterday around that Lone Rock area that received 4.5, 5 inches of rain on Saturday night as well, along with down south of Storm Lake around that Alta area where Now we're starting to see some ponding in some of these fields. Our prairie pothole soils are starting to fill back up. It's kind of funny. We were all talking about a drought going into this summer, and now we did have had just nice timely rains. But in certain areas, we have definitely received a little bit too much, and we have some water standing. And as you look into that and survivability of crop, standing water, right now we're at a critical time period for corn and beans, and can't spend a whole lot of time underwater. 2 to 4 days, critical time. Really depends on air temperature as well, how it will be able to survive that. But probably the biggest thing too, some of these areas with saturated soils or standing water, we can lose a fair amount of nitrogen as well. So you have a saturated soil or ponded soil, again, a little bit dependent on air temperature as well, but you can lose 4 to 5% of your nitrogen to denitrification, losing it as a nitrogen gas to the air, 4 to 5% a day. So you might receive some calls from some growers if you have some big areas. Obviously, if it's just a little pocket that's, a quarter of an acre, I don't know if we really need to do a whole lot for those. But these big fields that have large areas of standing water, there may be some opportunity to do some potential side dressing, wide dropping, late season nitrogen applications. So there might be some questions on that. Again, it's pretty small pockets out there, but we do have some standing water that's making this crop go backwards in a few areas.
Yeah, there again, just kind of like the fungicide conversation. We know we've got great potential. We've got a great crop coming. So we want to do everything we can to maximize that. Good old gall midge. Seeing a little bit of that, Nora?
Yeah, unfortunately, 2 of my counties, or some of my guys, were some of the counties just sent out and identified for the first time this year, Poweshiek and Tama. Oh, I see one of my circles got a little off. My bad. So for those of you who are not familiar with soybean gall midge, I wanted to include some pictures. So this is a pest that was identified in 2018. The original hot pockets were like that southeast South Dakota, northeast Nebraska. There were some really devastated fields. This northwest Iowa, you guys have had it a little bit longer than some of the guys south and east. But if you could go back to the other slide real quick, I just wanted to highlight how very, very small these can be. And I don't mean it mean, but if you might want to bring a magnifying glass. They are that small and can easily fall out when digging through plants. So I did get some calls yesterday. We're starting to see some wilted plants, usually on field edges. Now, the call I had yesterday was a soybean on soybean area for isolation around some seed corn. So there are some pockets of beans on beans around. And I wanted to also call out that on this left picture, you can see the purpley kind of bruised nature of that stem that I've broke open. That's one of the big identifying factors. It can easily be confused for Phytophthora. And so we really want to make sure that we're breaking these plants open. If we're seeing something funny, that we're pulling back that skin along that lower stem area. They have multiple generations a year. And now I guess I do have this on the next slide. This, I think, is something that I wanted to call your attention to because they can be made worse in hail situations. When I covered southeast South Dakota and northeast Nebraska, those later generations, we've had some pockets of hail. They need an entrance wound into the plant. Now, we have been getting that from the stretch marks that come in soybeans when we get that rapid growth after V2, V3. Hail can also do that for us. These fields that were identified in Poweshiek and Tama had hail last year, and I think that that's a potential reason why we have these hot spots this year where there's nothing else around them. They had wounds last year that allowed the later generations to come into new spots. They're very inconsistent between location years results on foliar insecticides. So we don't have a solid recommendation for you, but if you're out scouting, we want to take note of the fields that have this present. It's especially for next year, as if we're flipping an 80 back and forth. Those were my real problem areas in the past in southeast South Dakota. If we had a split quarter and that that line right where the crop was flipping, we could get some damage. But now is the time to scout if you're out looking for making, you know, fungicide decisions, things like that. Just take a peek into those end rows of the soybeans when you're going through. Probably not going to be a crisis scenario for our guys in this part of the world, but it is a touch point. It is something to just say, hey, this is around, pull a plant, have that discussion. But just wanted to call your guys' attention to it, that we are seeing those later instars that are bright orange and easier to find. Any comments or questions?
I was just going to add, talking to a dealer yesterday in Lyon County, they're seeing a fair amount of it. Same fields that they had 2 years ago. So, last year didn't seem to be a bad year, but now we're back with beans in some of those same areas. So it's definitely showing up. And yeah, it's frustrating when there's not a great management tactic going forward. Early on, that there have had some good results with cultivation, the old C word again, throwing dirt, but that has to be done early enough to really avoid the adults getting into those cracks that you're talking about, Nora.
Right. It's really trying to understand. I think we're still trying to figure out where are our hot spots, right? Let's really make sure that we're understanding where are the points that we need to look at these management tactics, because they do need to be planned for.
All right, we better keep moving. And I've got a few pictures from the Northwest Iowa Tech Development Research Site. And Ben, we have you on.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. I'm just here to provide a quick update on what's going on at the farm. Pictured here is the MD, or the show plots. I'm located just north of the 4-lane Highway 20, where it meets with Highway 71. So feel free to stop in if you're driving by. As far as the different corn trials I have right now and stuff, I'm kind of in the same boat as Nora on my corn rootworm trials. I floated them last week, and I saw some pupa and some third instar larvae. So I'm going to wait till probably next week to dig, just to make sure the majority of the feeding has occurred and we get some good results. And then I'm just starting to tassel in spots, and so hopefully next week I'll do my fungicide treatments. So there'll be that to look at hopefully later on. Different timings, different rates, competitive products, all that sort of stuff. As far as corn trials go, we've got our show plots, and then I've got the fungicide rate and all that. And then off-site, we have fungicide by hybrid and our gen trials. That's where we create the population recommendations for each hybrid. And there's some status versus Diflex stuff, conventro demos, all of that sort of thing, I guess. This next photo is the Preceon show plot. And then I just included, this is my first year working with Preceon, and I thought the height difference was cool. It started to show up around V8, V10 is when the nodal differentiation took place. So there's lots of stuff to look at. Could you go on the next slide, Jim? Thank you. So then we've also got some Viconic PCM4. So it's our pre-commercial plot where we're looking at, I believe there's 40 different varieties we're hoping to deploy or at least test further. And those early on, I tend to have higher pH on this farm. So early on, there was some iron fluorosis. I had some breeders come out and we took notes and stuff. And then the conventro demo, these photos are from earlier in the year with a 1x rate of conventro on corn and beans. And there's the flashing or crop response. It's mostly grown out of it now. It'll be destroyed fairly soon since it's all stewarded still. But those are kind of the fun things to look at. The herbicide stuff is always pretty interesting or pretty visual.
And I know I got a chance to look at those conventro plots, and it was interesting on the soybeans how actually compared to some of the other herbicides, particularly Valor, the growth stage on the conventro treated soybeans were ahead. Even though they had a little bit of that yellow flash, but they actually were one full growth stage ahead. So didn't seem to hold it back much. And, like you tend to see with some of the other products, it's temporary early on, but then it tends to take off and recover.
For sure.
But
I'll take a,
something we need to be prepared for, though, with conventional, we are going to see some crop response.
and I'll take crop response over stunting, probably every day of the week.
Yes, especially if it can get the weed control.
Yep. And this site here, we don't have an incredible amount of weeds like what Craig had in the past up at Storm Lake, but there were some differences, I would say, compared to the untreated at least. And we did have some wind the other day, so I'm going to take some green snap notes, hopefully, and have a good idea on the hybrids. I don't think it's anything too bad, but it did blow my porta potty over. So
I don't know. Hate to be the one to pick that one back up.
oh, it hadn't been used yet, so it was real light. Just picked right back up.
Ooh, you were saved.
Yep. But I would say that's the majority of my update. The rain's been just right. When other people get several inches, we get just an inch or half an inch or something like that. So the crop's looking pretty good other than the potential green snap. And feel free to reach out for field days or visits, and we can have some good discussions.
Yeah. Ben's got the farm looking really nice. So he's open to visitors. So dealers, if you want to take some customers there, just get a hold of one of us or get a hold of Ben, and I'm sure he'd be accommodating to have a group come through.
For sure.
All right. Appreciate the update, Ben. We'll finish up here with Spotlight product before we get into the wrap-up slide. So 10363 Smart Stacks Pro, 103-day course. For most squads, especially the squads up here to the north, this is going to be high volume. So we have really requested to have a lot of this for next year because of the fact it's very strong agronomically, very good out of the ground. Disease package, especially on tar spot, looked very good. So not many weaknesses on paper right now. Plus the yield was there. It had a double-digit yield advantage over 105.33 last year. So we expect some pretty big things out of this one, in a nice maturity, where, even if you're using it as an early corn, it looks like it'll have the standability to hang in there. So excited to have another Smart Stacks Pro in the lineup.
Yeah, it really fills a void for us. We've been waiting for a 103-day corn for a little while. I can't remember the last one, probably 53, 56, and you look at it on paper and performance, it's just like, yeah, this is going to be a great product for us going forward, it looks like.
Well, got to the slide you want with your QR code for those that are CCAs. So go ahead and get a snap of that, but certainly open up for other questions or comments or anything else that you're seeing out there in the field. Didn't talk a lot about beans, did we, Dustin or Nora, this time?
No, I would just, while guys are scanning this, I was in a few fields yesterday. The thing to watch out, I think we're running into some cyst, digging up some roots and looking at them, and they're yellowing up, and you would think just driving by on the road that it was IDC, but they're not in high pH pockets, and you go out there and start digging some roots, and you can start to see some cysts on those roots. We're going to pull some samples and send them in for egg counts. I don't think we've done a whole lot of that. Everybody thinks we have, cysts, and we manage around them, but I don't think we've pulled a lot of soil samples to really know how high our egg counts are. So just something to keep in mind.
I think the other thing with soybeans is managing these weeds that did not die and understanding that label restrictions and flowering and potential risks that come from spraying with flowers in very hot and humid weather. That is, I think, something that at least in Sac County is a conversation that's being had pretty hard and heavy as of this week.
Yeah, no question. A lot of soybeans being sprayed off label, and sometimes it's all we have in our toolbox to go out after some of the water hemp that have escaped. So hopefully next year we'll have a few more tools, knock on wood. If we can get that DEKALB label back. So that would be a blessing, because right now got a lot of people looking for some options. All right, well, we will wrap up. Appreciate everyone for being on again, and Glad you're able to join us. We'll also send this out so you'll have the slides to look at. But any last words, Dustin or Nora?
Nope. Thanks for
Stay
everybody
cool.
attending. Yep. Have a good day.
All right. Bye now. Thank you.